Shut up. You're supposed to be dead. Showtime.
The moment we saw Lamar rise from the dead, we knew he was going to cause chaos, violence, and death. And so it's always going to cause this level of complexity for Meech and Terry, who weren't exactly on the best of terms at the beginning of Season 2, but womb to the tomb were the words they spoke in Season 1, and in Episode 4, they certainly lived up to those words and loyalty. So where Season 2 started off with a bumpy ride for the brothers, they were back in business. But in Episode 4, Terry and Meech faced all sorts of problems. Terry went against Meech's advice to approach Pat, and instead used his car ride service to transport product he got from Boom. This was intercepted by none other than Detective Brian, who called Denise, someone who had something to lose. On the other side, Lamar the Bee Silas was on a warpath, and they were losing soldiers like flies. So with Denise in custody and Lamar out in the open, both Terry and Meech were at risk in different ways, and so they only had one option: run. Now we kick Episode 4 off with Meech in hospital. He's being operated on as he took 3 bullets from Lamar. He had worried Nikki, Lucille, Charles, and especially Laurie, who was the mother of one of Meech's daughters, the other being Tiara, who he had with Monique. But Meech was a soldier and he survived, but he's in pain, cut up, and on heavy medication, but still managed to crack a joke about how he can open his eyes wider than Terry can. And so he was in good spirits, and why not, after he just escaped near death. But Terry wasn't taking any chances, especially after they found out Lamar was alive. They knew once he found out Meech had survived, he'd be back to finish the job. And so a Tech-9 was put in the hands of Meech, just in case. And he was right, because Lamar Silas was back from the dead again. One of the craziest, if not the craziest characters across all of 50 shows from the Power universe to BMF is Lamar the Bee Silas. He comes back dressed as a nurse to try and finish what he started. But Terry was 3 moves ahead. Regardless of Meech being in recovery, he'd taken him to safety, and so Lamar was only greeted with an empty hospital bed, much to his frustration. Now Meech definitely needed to be in hospital, because there was no way he could recover so quick, but he had no choice but to hold up at Laurie's, who of course, was in panic mode, because if Lamar was to track Meech, then it's not just Meech in danger, there's Laurie, Nene, and her parents.
Yeah, we out of cash in, we out of fucking work. Drought's raging. Niggas already on one because we missed one with K9.
So hit up your medical grade shit connect.
Niggas in the win. And even if he wasn't shit, what? 5-0's already over all that shit.
Now what if we move the work to Lansing?
Lamar was only a third of the problems in Episode 4. BMF made Meech aware they were out of cash and product, and when questioned about the medical grade connect he had lined up in Episode 3, who happened to be Detective Brian, BMF said he was out in the wind. So with no product from K9 and with the drought raging, they had a problem, and soldiers had to eat, just like we saw later on. Soldiers were dropping like flies because some of the original 12th Street boys thought Meech can talk the talk, but not walk the walk. So with the issues with the cash and product, this is where Terry thought it would be best if he stepped in and took control over the BMF while Meech was down. But this causes conflict with BMF, who thought he was second in command. But this isn't a new issue, this dates back to Season 1. BMF's never been happy to just sit on the sidelines while decisions are made without him. But B's been MIA a few times, and most recently, Terry had to drive to Cleveland, which was something BMF had to do. Now Meech said to hit up Pat because K9 cut their supply and Big L was dead, but Pat was Meech's guy and he never gave Terry the time of day. So Terry thought he'd go to Boom for product, someone who he did briefly see in Season 1. But the problem with Boom was, he was Marquisha's husband, and this is where business mixes with pleasure, which is always a bad idea, and I'm gonna come back to that in just a moment. But first, we had Meech and Lamar brought into the station and coming face to face, and it really was like dead men looking into each other's eyes. Although Lamar was handcuffed to the table, and there's a good reason why. He's someone who thrives in chaos and violence, something he continued later when he killed 2 former 12th Street boys, someone who he had issues with in Season 1. So he brutally murdered one in the street, and the other in the bathroom, with the second being similar to something from a horror movie. But with Meech and Lamar across the room from one another, they were given the opportunity to snitch on the other, because ironically, they were each other's shooters, but they know the street code. This is what Lamar and Meech were in essence doing, sharpening each other's skills, because the only way you get better and stronger is if you face a stronger opponent that forces you to level up in every single aspect, but eventually Batman was still the hero, who always wins. Now the fact that Meech was still in recovery, Jin recognized that someone had to fill Meech's shoes, and Detective Brian knew the 2 brothers better than she did. He knew that Terry was the man, and he didn't even need BMF to tell him that. So we saw Terry making good on his promise to Meech. He was gonna step in and find a new connect, but it wasn't Pat, it was Boom. Earlier in the episode, Markeisha gave the location to where Boom would be, and Terry was able to convince him to give him some weight. But not only did he walk out of that meeting with an agreement with Boom, he walked out of there reaffirming to Markeisha that if she was with him, he'd treat her like a queen, not a servant. Now with Meech having lined up a supplier, he was back to business at his car ride service, but with a twist. This time they'd be using their cars to transport the weight, something that caused a conflict with Jin and Brian. On one hand, Jin thought on paper Terry was a good kid, but Brian knew them better, and he was right. Terry brought Denise in on the plan to transport the weight to Lansing. All she had to do was drive there and park the car. He knew the rules for them were different. They don't often get stopped, and they come with certain privileges, something we've seen Tommy and Braden take advantage of in Power. But Terry still had to do his bit, a cleverly navigated pickup from the old people's home, which worked, but also kind of backfired, because Brian knew Terry was way too smart to get caught, and so they were going to tail Denise instead. And they were right. Once they pulled Denise over, Brian found the trap that held the stash of product and the carbon paper, something which BMF lined up earlier in the episode for Terry. He was the one who double-checked the secret compartment, but clearly it wasn't good enough. Or did BMF do it on purpose for the shit he took earlier on? After all, he's working for Brian, and he was supposed to be number 2, something that was taken away by Terry. So I'm not sure if BMF did his job here, because there's always something to gain by getting rid of the man at the top. So who suffered in this situation? Denise got pulled over in for questioning with Detective Brian, and he knew she was gonna sing like a bird, especially because she had a son, and that meant Terry was in danger. Once Denise called and asked for Terry, Charles knew what had happened, but Terry's answer was he was trying to save Meech. Throughout BMF, Terry's been Lucille's golden child, someone who she thought she could save from the street game, and even stood by both Meech and Terry in church when the others turned their back. But this was the moment Lucille had enough of Terry. Now this caused a conflict between the two brothers, because Meech gave Terry specific instructions to go to Pat, and he still chose to go to Boom, but the weight was gone, and Brian had Denise in custody, and they knew there was no way she was going to eat the charges, so the only way out of this was to run. But before they did, Terry made a quick pit stop to see Markeisha, a relationship which may cause problems and beef with Boom later, while Meech said his goodbyes to Laurie and Nene, and both of them walking out of their home they grew up in, with Charles giving him the last of the money he had left, telling them they better stick together. Now, as they were trying to leave Detroit, they were hit from behind by none other than Lamar the Beast Silas. We saw this fierce car chase with Lamar trying to get on this side where he could then flip Terry's car, but a clever maneuver allowed Meech and Terry to escape to fight another day, and just to add to Lamar's frustration. So what's his next move? Because I highly doubt Lamar will sit on the sidelines. But that's a breakdown of BMF Season 2, Episode 4, an episode where actions, consequences, and mistakes have led Terry and Meech to run, and most likely to Atlanta. So drop all your thoughts down below on all things Episode 4, especially on what you think is next for Terry and Meech, but also for Lamar and BMF. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything BMF and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.